Imagine living on a quiet, isolated farm in the Bavarian countryside. No neighbors for miles, just you, your family, and the silence of the forest. But in March of 1922, that silence was broken forever at a place called Hinterkaifeck. 6 people were brutally slaughtered, and the killer vanished without a trace. To this day, the murders remain one of Germany's darkest unsolved mysteries. And the most chilling part, the murderer may have stayed in the house for days, feeding the animals, eating the family's food, and sleeping under the same roof as the corpses. The Gruber family lived on Hinterkaifeck Farm, an isolated homestead about 70 kilometers north of Munich. Their nearest neighbors were half a kilometer away, and beyond that, nothing but forests and fields. In such a lonely place, news traveled slowly, and cries for help could vanish into the silence of the countryside. Family. Andreas Gruber, the father, was 63 years old. He was known as a harsh man, controlling, and sometimes cruel. His wife, Kazilia, was 72. They worked the land and kept mostly to themselves. Their daughter, Victoria Gabriel, was 35, a widow with 2 children, 7-year-old Kazilia and 2-year-old Joseph. Victoria was respected in the local church choir, but her life was far from peaceful. Dark rumors swirled around her relationship with her father, Andreas. Whispers of abuse and scandal that made the family an object of gossip. And then there was the family's maid, Maria Baumgartner. Just 44 years old, she had only arrived at the farm that very day to begin working. By nightfall, she would be dead. It all began with strange events before the murders. In the days leading up to the crime, Andreas noticed footprints in the snow leading from the forest of the farm, but none leading back out. He also heard footsteps in the attic, though when he searched, he found nothing. A set of house keys went missing, and neighbors later recalled Andreas telling them about an unfamiliar newspaper found in the home, one nobody in the family had purchased. Something was wrong at Hinterkaifeck. On the evening of March 31st, 1922, the killer struck. Using a mattock, a heavy farming tool like a pickaxe, the murderer lured Andreas, his wife Kazilia, their daughter Victoria, and young Kazilia into the barn one by one. There they were slaughtered. Inside the farmhouse, little Joseph was killed in his cot, and the maid Maria was murdered in her bedroom. 6 victims in total. What makes the case terrifying is what happened next. The bodies weren't discovered immediately. For days, life on the farm seemed to continue as normal. Neighbors reported smoke rising from the chimney. Food had been eaten. The family's cows had been milked. Even the dog was fed. It was as if the killer had moved in and lived among the dead. The crime was discovered 4 days later, when nearest neighbors, suspicious of the family's sudden silence, went to investigate. What they found was a nightmare. 6 bodies stacked in the barn and the house, already decomposing. Police were called in from Munich. The lead investigator was Inspector George Gruber. What he and his team uncovered only deepened the mystery. The killer clearly knew the layout of the farm. There were no signs of forced entry. The attack was brutal but precise. And perhaps most chilling of all, young Kazilia, just 7 years old, appeared to have survived her initial injuries. She had pulled out tufts of her own hair in terror before finally dying. Over the following weeks, dozens of suspects were questioned. Some believed Victoria's late husband's family had sought revenge. Others pointed fingers at Karl Gabriel, her supposedly dead husband, who some whispered had never really died in First World War. Another theory suggested that Lorenz Schlittenbauer, a neighbor with a complicated history with Victoria, might have been involved. He knew the farm well. He was among the first to discover the bodies. And some claimed his behavior afterwards was strangely calm. But no hard evidence ever tied him to the murders. Years passed, and the case remained cold. The farmhouse itself was eventually demolished in 1923, but people whispered that the ground where it once stood was cursed. Theories continue to this day. Some say it was a drifter who stumbled upon the isolated farm and killed for money, though nothing valuable was stolen. Others believe it was a family member or neighbor with a personal vendetta. And still, there are those who think the truth is even stranger. A killer who enjoyed the murder so much, he lived comfortably in the house among his victims until the world outside came too close. In 2007, German investigators re-examined the case with modern forensic techniques. They claimed to have narrowed the suspects to one person, but refused to reveal the name, out of respect for surviving relatives. The mystery officially remains unsolved. 100 years later, the Hinterkaifeck murders still haunt Germany. 6 lives taken brutally, a killer who vanished into the night, and a question that will likely never be answered. Who lived in that house of death and why? What do you think really happened at Hinterkaifeck? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. This is Whisper Unknown. Subscribe for more chilling mysteries from history, because some questions may never have answers.